Welcome to Agent Amigos. Today's talk, the sound of shapes, how Eigendrum turns drawings into music. Sit back, this is going to be worth your time. You've heard 1,000 drum sounds in your life. Rock beats, jazz brushes, orchestral timpani. Every one of them came from a circular drum. But here's a question that's been bugging mathematicians for centuries. What would a triangle drum sound like? Or a star? Or a squiggly blob you just doodled? Most people would say that's nonsense. Drums are round, period. But they'd be wrong. There's a free online tool called Eigendrum that lets you draw any shape on your screen, and it instantly plays what that shape would sound like if it were a drum. Sounds like magic, but it's pure math and physics. And the best part? You can try it right now. No instruments, no equipment, just your computer and your imagination. But before you start doodling, let me tell you why this works. The story behind it goes from ancient Greek philosophers to quantum mechanics, all because someone asked a simple question: what makes a drum sound the way it does? The answer, as you'll see, is all about shape. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's unravel the sound of shapes together. This is going to change the way you hear everything. And who knows, maybe you'll discover a sound that's never been heard before. That's the joy of experimentation. It's not about being right, it's about exploring. And Eigendrum makes exploration as easy as picking up a pen. You might be wondering, why does shape matter so much? After all, a drum is just a membrane stretched over a frame, right? But the frame's shape dictates the boundary conditions. That's a fancy way of saying the edges of the drum are fixed, and the vibrations have to be zero at those edges. Think of a guitar string again. The ends are fixed, so the string can only vibrate in ways that have nodes at the ends. That's why you get discrete notes, not a continuous range. For a drum, the entire edge is fixed. So the vibration patterns must fit within the shape. If the shape has sharp corners, the patterns get distorted. This is why the shape has such a dramatic effect on the sound. It's not just about the size of the drum, it's about the geometry. A larger drum generally produces a lower pitch, but two drums of the same area but different shapes will sound completely different. That's a profound insight. He even wrote a massive book called The Theory of Sound in 1877. It's still a classic. But here's the thing, for most of history, you couldn't actually hear what a triangular drum sounded like. You could calculate it, but not hear it. That's what makes Eigendrum so revolutionary. It puts centuries of mathematical research into your hands, literally. You can draw a shape and instantly hear what Rayleigh could only imagine. It's like having a time machine to the future of acoustics. And it's all thanks to the humble eigenvalue, a concept that most people never hear about, but that governs everything from quantum mechanics to the sound of your voice. So how does Eigendrum actually work under the hood? Let's break it down. You open the website and you see a blank canvas. You draw any closed shape with your mouse or finger. The app then takes that shape and runs a numerical method called the finite element method. It's a way to approximate the solution to the wave equation on a complex shape. The shape is divided into thousands of tiny triangles. Each triangle is simple, so the math is easy. Then the computer stitches them all together to solve the problem for the whole shape. That's the direction we're heading. With virtual reality, you could even draw 3D shapes and hear them as instruments. The math is already there, we just need the tools. And Eigendrum is a great example of what's possible. It's a small project, but it has big implications. It shows that complex physics can be made accessible to everyone. You don't need a PhD to understand eigenvalues. You just need to draw a shape and listen. That's the power of interactive visualization. And as technology advances, we'll see more tools like this. Tools that let us play with the fundamental laws of the universe. Tools that turn abstract math into something you can hear and feel. That's the future of sound design. And it's already here, in your browser, waiting for you to draw your first drum. Let's step back and think about the bigger picture. Eigendrum is not just a fun toy. It's a bridge between two worlds, the world of mathematics and the world of music. For centuries, these two fields have been deeply connected. Pythagoras saw numbers in music. Kepler saw music in the orbits of planets. But for most people, that connection is invisible. Eigendrum makes it visible and audible. It lets you experience the beauty of math in a completely new way. And that's important. Because math is often seen as cold and abstract. But it's actually the language of the universe. It's the rules that govern everything from the smallest particle to the largest galaxy. And when you hear a shape, you're hearing those rules in action. You're hearing the universe's own music. That's a profound experience. And it's available to anyone with an internet connection. So next time you're feeling disconnected from the world, try drawing a drum. Listen to the shape. You might just hear the universe in a whole new way. Finally, let's talk about what Eigendrum means for the future of education. Imagine a physics class where students don't just read about waves. The frequency content is different. Eigendrum's sound is rich in overtones, so it stimulates many hair cells at once. That's why it sounds so complex and interesting. And here's a fun fact. The lowest frequency a human can hear is about 20 Hz. That's a vibration occurring 20 times per second. The highest is about 20,000 Hz. Eigendrum's sounds typically fall in the mid-range, so they're easy to hear. But the exact frequencies depend on the size of your drawing. A larger shape produces lower frequencies, just like a larger drum. So you can actually play with pitch by resizing your drawing. That's a great way to learn about the relationship between size and frequency. So what can you do with Eigendrum? The possibilities are endless. Musicians can use it to generate unique percussive sounds for their tracks. Instead of using a standard drum kit, they can draw their own custom drums. Imagine a song with a triangle drum beat, a star-shaped cymbal, and a heart-shaped bass drum. That would be truly original. Sound designers can use it to create alien sound effects for games and movies. But draw a square, and you get something different. The corners break the symmetry, so the frequencies aren't as clean. You get a slightly harsher, more metallic sound. Draw a star, and it gets even more complex. The points create sharp discontinuities that scatter the vibrations. The result is a sound that's almost percussive, with lots of high-frequency energy. And here's the cool part, as you gradually morph the shape, you can hear the sound change in real time. It's like you're sculpting sound with your mouse. This is not just a gimmick. It's a way to explore the deep connection between geometry and acoustics. Musicians can use it to find new timbres. Educators can use it to teach physics. And the rest of us can just have fun doodling and listening. But there's something even more profound. When you hear a shape, you're experiencing a fundamental property of the universe. The fact that a triangle sounds different from a circle is not an accident. It's a consequence of the laws of physics. And Eigendrum lets you hear that law in action, every time you draw. The vibrations have to fit into those sharp corners. They bounce around in crazy patterns. The result is a completely different sound, full of dissonance and weird harmonics. Eigendrum calculates those modes for any shape you draw. It solves the wave equation, which is the mathematical description of how vibrations move across a surface. And it does it in real time, right in your browser. The math is heavy, but the result is pure magic. You draw a star, you hear a star. It's that simple. And that's just the beginning. Let's get a little nerdy. The name Eigendrum comes from eigenvalues. That's a German word meaning own values or characteristic values. In math, eigenvalues are special numbers that tell you how a system behaves. For a drum, the eigenvalues are the frequencies at which it can vibrate. Each shape has a unique set of eigenvalues. It's like a fingerprint. No two shapes have exactly the same set, unless they're identical. This is where it gets mind-blowing. They draw them. They hear them. They play with them. That's a significant shift. Eigendrum makes abstract concepts tangible. It turns equations into experiences. And that's the best way to learn. When you can interact with an idea, you understand it on a deeper level. You remember it. You can explain it to others. And that's what education should be about. Not memorizing formulas, but exploring ideas. Eigendrum is a perfect example of that. It's a tool that encourages curiosity and creativity. It's a tool that makes learning fun. And that's something we need more of. So if you're a teacher, use Eigendrum in your classroom. If you're a student, play with it on your own. And if you're just a curious person, give it a try. You won't be disappointed. Because Eigendrum is more than just a drum. It's a window into the hidden harmony of the universe. And once you see it, you'll never hear the world the same way again. So there you have it. The story of Eigendrum, from ancient math to modern web tech. It's a story about curiosity, creativity, and the power of simple tools. It's a story that shows us that even the most complex ideas can be made accessible. And it's a story that invites you to participate. So go ahead. Open your browser. Draw a shape. Listen to what it has to say. You might be surprised at what you hear. And who knows, maybe you'll discover something new about the world, and about yourself. After all, the universe is full of hidden sounds. All you have to do is listen. There's a famous problem in mathematics called, "Can you hear the shape of a drum?" It was posed by Mark Casey in 1966. The question is, if you know all the frequencies a drum can produce, can you deduce its exact shape? For years, mathematicians thought the answer was yes. But in 1992, two mathematicians, Carolyn Gordon and David Webb, found two different shapes that produce the exact same set of frequencies. So the answer is no, you can't always hear the shape. But for most shapes, you can get pretty close. Eigendrum uses these eigenvalues to generate the sound. It computes the first few hundred eigenvalues for your drawing, then synthesizes the audio. So when you hear that weird, haunting tone, you're literally hearing the math of that shape. It's like listening to the universe's secret code. This idea isn't new. People have been obsessed with the connection between math and sound for thousands of years. Pythagoras, the ancient Greek philosopher, discovered that musical intervals correspond to simple ratios. A string half the length of another produces a note an octave higher. He saw numbers everywhere, including in music. Fast forward to the 18th century, and mathematicians like Euler were working on the vibrations of membranes. But it wasn't until the 19th century that the wave equation was fully developed. That's when physicists like Lord Rayleigh started studying the acoustics of drums. Just draw a weird shape and see what it sounds like. Composers can use it to explore new harmonic structures. The overtones of non-circular drums are not harmonic, so they create interesting dissonances that can be used in avant-garde music. Teachers can use it to demonstrate physics concepts in the classroom. Students can see and hear the connection between geometry and acoustics. And for hobbyists, it's just plain fun. You can spend hours drawing shapes and listening to them. It's like a musical instrument, but the instrument is the shape itself. And because it's web-based, you can share your creations with others. You can send a link to a shape you drew, and your friends can hear it. That's a new way of sharing music. It's not just about the sound, it's about the visual. The shape is part of the art. This is just the beginning. Eigendrum is a proof of concept. But it points to a future where sound design is more intuitive, more visual, and more accessible. Imagine a synthesizer where you don't turn knobs, but you draw the waveform you want. Or a drum machine where you sketch the drum shape on a tablet. It means that the shape is not just an aesthetic choice, it's a sonic choice. And that has implications beyond drums. Think of bells, gongs, even the human vocal tract. The shape of the vocal tract determines the timbre of your voice. So when you hear someone speak, you're hearing the shape of their throat and mouth. Shape is everywhere in sound. And Eigendrum lets you play with that idea directly. But how do we actually perceive these sounds? It's all about the inner ear. When sound waves enter your ear, they vibrate the eardrum. That motion is transferred to the cochlea, a spiral-shaped organ filled with fluid. Inside the cochlea, there are thousands of tiny hair cells. Each hair cell is sensitive to a specific frequency. When a sound contains that frequency, the corresponding hair cell fires. Your brain then interprets the pattern of firing as a sound. So the ear is like a Fourier analyzer. It breaks down complex sounds into their component frequencies. That's why we can distinguish a triangle drum from a square drum. It's like building a mosaic, but instead of tiles, you're using equations. The result is a list of frequencies, the eigenvalues. Then, Eigendrum uses a technique called additive synthesis to create the sound. It generates sine waves at each of those frequencies, with amplitudes that correspond to how strongly each mode is excited. The more modes you include, the richer the sound. Eigendrum typically uses the first 100 or so modes. That's enough to give you a complex, realistic timbre. The whole process takes less than a second. It's incredibly fast, thanks to modern web technologies and clever coding. And the best part? It runs entirely in your browser. No server needed. That means it's private, it's fast, and it's accessible to anyone with an internet connection. It's a masterpiece of modern software engineering. So what do you actually hear? When you draw a circle, you get a smooth, mellow tone. That's because the circular symmetry makes the frequencies harmonic. They're multiples of a fundamental frequency, like a plucked string. Let me tell you a quick story. When I first found Eigendrum, I spent an hour drawing random blobs and listening to them. I drew a heart, a lightning bolt, a coffee mug. Each one had its own voice. Some were beautiful, some were awful, but all were fascinating. I even drew my own signature and played it. That was weird. But it got me thinking, what if you could design sounds this way? Instead of tweaking knobs on a synthesizer, you could just draw the shape you want. That's a whole new way of creating music. And that's exactly what Eigendrum enables. It's not just a toy, it's a tool for creativity. The developer, whose name is actually not mentioned on the site, made it open source. So anyone can look at the code, learn from it, even improve it. That's the spirit of the maker community. And that spirit is what drives innovation. So next time you're stuck in a creative rut, try drawing a drum. You might be surprised at what you hear. Literally. Let's start with something you've felt. You hit a drum, and the skin vibrates. Those vibrations travel through the air as sound waves. Simple enough. But here's the twist, the shape of the drum determines which vibrations are possible. Think of a guitar string. A string has a fixed length, and it can only vibrate in certain patterns. Those patterns create the notes you hear. A drum is like a string, but two-dimensional. Instead of a line, you have a surface. And that surface can vibrate in an infinite number of ways. Each of those ways is called a mode. The lowest mode is the fundamental pitch. Higher modes add overtones. But here's the kicker, the shape of the drum constrains those modes. A circle has a beautiful symmetry, so its modes are nice and regular. But a triangle. Thank you for watching Agent Amigos. If this talk sparked something in you, hit like, subscribe to Agent Amigos, and share it with one person who needs to hear it. Knowledge is better when it is shared. See you at the next talk.